Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast of your favorite team in the Bay Area. And today we are going to look at one Ryan Merkley and wonder, is it time to start panicking about Ryan Merkley's development, or are things going okay-ish? So we're going to look at Ryan Merkley, how he compares to other defensemen in his draft class, and then see if try to answer the question, is it time to panic about Ryan Merkley? All that on today's episode of Locked On Sharks.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am your host, JD Young, contributor to San Jose Hockey Now. Of course, I've been doing this podcast for a couple years now, and something new coming down the pipe here pretty soon. But I want to thank you guys for making me your first Sharks listen. Today's episode, of course, is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So Ryan Merkley has been kind of an enigma for Sharks fans. He was drafted into the 2018 draft, 21st overall out of Guelph Storm. And since then he slid down in the draft process due to red flags with his character. Some thought he could be, have attitude issues, or there's talks about his dad maybe kind of being a little heavy-handed behind the scenes, et cetera, with him. So, crazy, talented, offensively gifted defenseman who definitely does not like to play defense, especially during his draft season, leading up to the draft. And, so there was some definitely red flags, and the Sharks stopped the bleeding by picking him at the 21st draft pick. When he was drafted, easily became their top prospect. But, last year he made his debut in the NHL, and things really haven't kind of panned out as I think Sharks management would have hoped with him, where he's, we know that the offense is there, but the defense has always still been kind of the issue with him. And the hope is if you can just get like okay-ish defense, but if you provide so much on the offensive end, that would be more than make up for it. So today we're going to look at his path so far to the NHL. We're going to look at how he compares to other defensemen taken in the 2018 draft, especially those guys who were taken right around him, that we can compare him. And then we're going to kind of discuss if Ryan Merkley, if it is time to panic about Ryan Merkley, or if it's, development is it's got peaks and valleys and it's never just a flat thing. So, so let's dig into Ryan Merkley and his background. Like I said, 21st overall, the 2018 draft. In his draft year, he played 63 games, had 13 goals, 54 assists for 67 points. And after his D+1, so the season after he gets drafted, he played with the Gulf, and then got traded to the Peterborough Petes that season. In 28 games with the Gulf, he had 5 goals, 34 assists, 39 points in 28 games. And then after the trade, he had 9 goals, 23 assists for 32 points in 35 games. So his total for that season was between the Petes and the Gulf or between the Petes and the Storm. Sorry. He had 14 goals, 57 assists, 71 points in 63 games. So well above that very nice points per game. In the offseason, got traded to the London Knights, where I think that's where he wanted to kind of be the whole time. The London Knights are known for the development. They're always competing and winning, et cetera, et cetera. Had a really nice season for the Knights that year. 15 goals, 61 assists for 76 points in 60 games. So again, the problem with Merkley is the points are always there, at least with him in his junior season. It was just, if you can get just something on the defensive side. So his D+3 season, he finally makes it to San Jose full time. This is the COVID year, the 2020, 2021 season, basically the 2021 season where the Sharks and the CUDA basically didn't go home for the first 2 months of the season. But in 31 games there, he had 1 goal, 11 assists for 12 points. And then his D+4. So this is his 4th season after his draft. He split time between the CUDA and the Sharks. On the Barracuda, he had 1 goal, 18 assists, and 19 points in 30 games. He started out the season really strong, was really floating around that point per game total. And then he got called up, of course, when the COVID outbreak, made his NHL debut, played a couple games there, then got sent back down, was kind of floating between a lot of, did not play, et cetera, et cetera. And then with the Sharks, so he played 39 games with the Sharks this season, had 1 goal, 5 assists for 6 points, 15-23 time on ice. And that was among defensemen who are actually on the team by the end of the season. That was 5th. So if you add Jacob Middleton, who was traded at the trade deadline, he would have been 6th. But the only kind of noted defenseman ahead of him that he was ahead of were Vlasic and Šimik. And of course, your guys like Hadaka and stuff who got a couple games here and there. So, you can, again, you see with Merkley, it's always been about providing offense. But again, just the defensive side just isn't quite there with him. Evolving hockey, he didn't really play enough minutes to qualify for a one of his little player cards where it kind of ranks his percentile. But pulling it up, he just didn't really provide much defense or offense. But that's also to be expected with a first-year player. So let's go ahead, take a quick break, and then we'll get into how Merkley compares to his other defensemen in his draft. But first, we got to talk to you guys about our friends over at BetOnline. You guys know BetOnline is our premier partner that continues to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next year's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs to esports and more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so Merkley was the 21st pick in that 2018 draft. In the first round, he was one of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 defensemen taken in the first round. And all of these guys have gotten games except for one, Philip Johnson, that was drafted by the Minnesota Wild. He was drafted. He's a Swedish kid. So he was drafted by the Wild, and they still own his rights. Hasn't been signed yet. So that's kind of a bad sign for him. But anyway, let's start with the top. So first pick of the draft, the Sabres pick Rasmus Dahlin. He's played 4 seasons already. He's 277 games played, 31 goals, 129 assists for a total of 160 points. Yeah, whatever. I mean, Dahlin's been, I think he's kind of finally starting to figure it out for the Sabres. But at 7th overall was the Canucks drafted Quinn Hughes. He's #good. So in 4 seasons, 205 games played, 19 goals, 146 assists for 165 total points. The Blackhawks selected Adam Boqvist, 3 seasons, 128 games, 17 goals, 34 assists, 51 points. The Oilers selected Evan Bouchard. So he had 3 seasons. He's had 102 games played, 15 goals, 34 assists for 49 points. Islanders selected Noah Dobson. And he's had, during that, so he's had in 3 seasons, 160 games, 17 goals, 55 assists for 72 points. The Devils selected at number 17, Ty Smith, in 2 seasons, 114 games played, 7 goals, 36 assists, 43 total points. Beloved Ryan Merkley was the 21st pick. One actual season, 39 games played, 1 goal, 5 assists, 6 points. The Rangers, this one kills me. At 22, they picked Condre Miller, who in 2 seasons had played 135 games, 12 goals, 20 assists, and 32 points. So bookmark Miller. We'll get back to him in just a minute. Like I said, the Wild, they picked at 24. Philip Johnson hasn't reached the NHL yet, hasn't got his contract. A little worrisome there. The Sens picked Jacob Bernard Docker at 26. 2 seasons, he's played 13 games. He has an assist. Blackhawks picked Nicholas Bodin. 3 seasons, 22 games, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. The Rangers picked Niles Lundqvist. 1 season, he's played 25 games this year. 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. And then the Maple Leafs, Rasmus Sandin, 3 seasons, 88 games, 6 goals, 22 assists for 28 points. And then the Caps picked Alexander Axiev, who's played 1 game and hasn't racked up any points. So you kind of see like the Condre Miller, that's kind of been the tipping point. And then, the other kind of notable draft picks, let me kind of just look in the rest of the round. Alexander Romanov, he's played 2 seasons with the Canadiens, 133 games, 4 goals, 15 points, 15 assists, 19 total points. Let's see, Martin Feriev, who I have butchered his name, but anyway, 2 seasons, 85 games, 8 goals, 10 assists, 18 points. Sean Durzi, who's picked by the Leafs, but then got traded to the Kings. In his first season this year, he had 64 games, 3 goals, 24 assists for 27 points, and then some onesie twosies or type of thing. So yeah, I mean, you kind of can tell like the guys that were really, I mean, other than Miller, the guys after Merkley really haven't done too much in the NHL. And it feels like Merkley's development is kind of on par with these guys, where it's like he's not there, with the points yet. He's definitely in the kind of the same ballpark with how many games he's played compared to these guys in points and stuff like that. But it's a little worrisome, especially when you're supposed to be an offensive guru, that you're not putting up the same amount of points that you're hoping for. But Miller, Condre Miller, who was picked right after Ryan Merkley by the Rangers, and he's been playing really well for them. So this last season, he played all 82 games, 7 goals, 13 assists, 20 points, and averaged 20-36 of time on ice. And like that's one of those things where if you wonder if picking between the two nowadays, if they had a chance that you could have had Condre Miller, who looks like he's going to be right now, he's a better player than what Ryan Merkley is on the ice. Again, it's still very early in their development, et cetera, but that is not looking like that looks like it might be a miss right there for the Sharks when it comes to their drafting and developing, especially since Condre Miller, if you pull up his his evolving hockey stat, he 82nd overall percentile defenseman, 66th offense, but 87th percentile defensively. So he's doing it well on both ends of the ice, and this year really kind of took a big step forward. After kind of getting through his rookie. Last year he was really good on the offense, but he needed to work on his defense. And this year he took a major step forward defensively. And that's going to happen with just playing with more ice, getting more comfortable and getting out there and playing more. So, it's right now that one's looking a little worrisome if you compare Miller to Merkley and just where they're at in their process right now of their development process, where Miller's already played a bunch more NHL games. You can already see his improvement defensively. He's providing offense. Again, it does help having Adam Fox on the team where you don't have to be the guy. Not that Ryan Merkley has to be the guy right now with Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson still on the team, but you would hope that that Merkley would provide just a little bit more. Like we've seen the sparks, but it's just so inconsistent with him right now. So, yeah, right. I mean, the other guys were picked, were picked ahead of him, and with good cause for being picked ahead of him. And those guys are kind of, panning out as they would with high draft picks, but. Merkley, it's just getting a little worrisome with Merkley. So, but I mean, it's tough, right? Like I said, development isn't linear for every player, and there's gonna be peaks and valleys with all players, right? So you're gonna have, not everybody it's not a straight line from getting from point A to point B with their development. And we know Merkley can provide so much offense. At least we've seen on the juniors and levels, and he was well on his way this year with Akuta and before getting called up to the NHL, where you could see that offense, and he was providing offense. And not that Akuta team was very good at all, but he was kind of being the minutes muncher down in the AHL, was providing offense and stuff, and doing well on his way to kind of developing. So you wonder if right now, if he could just be kind of a tweener guy, kind of like Noah Gregor was for the past couple of years before he really stuck this year, where he's just too good to play in the AHL, but he's just not quite there yet with the NHL. And I think that just might be where Merkley is right now, where he, if you put him on the Barracuda, I mean, you put him on the Barracuda, he's going to thrive. He's going to be a big fish in a small pond type of situation where, he's going to put up a lot of points, and he's going to be able to, maybe experiment a little bit more and try stuff out next year. But at some point, though, you still need to just be able to prove that you can play in the NHL. And I just think right now he just might be kind of stuck in between. So, for Merkley, I'm going to be confused on what they should do with him. I'm really interested to see how his summer goes, where if he, puts in the work this summer and tries to prove that he can be an NHL player, going into next year. That's the hope. And then he comes out into training camp and he proves like, yes, I'm an NHL player. We don't know who's going to be there with, I'm assuming Burns and Karlsson are both going to be there right now. I know there's a bunch of rumors, but the hope is that on the right side, you're going to have Burns and Karlsson. Those guys are playing your 20 to 25 minutes. And then Merkley can start to creep up to that, like instead of the 15 minutes he's playing, maybe start creeping up to that 17, 18 minute mark. That way, Burns and Karlsson don't have to play a bajillion minutes, but then, that he's earned those minutes and that he's starting to play more and more and kind of, work on that defensive game with where he's, you see flashes of it, but just being more consistent. And I think that's the thing with Merkley is turning those flashes into consistency with him. And, the hope is that he can provide a ton of offense, and then his defense, you can kind of live with it, where if it's not, he's never going to be a prime Mark Edward Vlasic and kind of be a shutdown player. But if he can just do enough, and then I think too, just finding the right partner with him. I thought the Vlasic Merkley combo wasn't too bad. Again, we've talked about with Vlasic, if that might be an option for the Sharks of buying him out, just because you don't want to spend $7 million on a defensive third pairing guy. But maybe like if Knizhov comes back and, if he's healthy, and we saw how well he played with Karlsson last year, or 2 years ago, where Karlsson was kind of, let Karlsson kind of do his thing, and then Knizhov could kind of be the anchor and kind of support things. So I feel like maybe that might be a good pair. Let Merkley do his stuff, work on his defense, and then have a guy who can, provide kind of a safety net or safety blanket for Merkley. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a huge season for Merkley to kind of prove if he has it or not, especially, it is a contract season for Merkley. I mean, I don't think they're just going to give up on him, but he going into this next, season is the end of his ELC. He is definitely going to be an RFA, but, so they can kind of play the contract game with him for a little bit, but it's tough. Like he's going to be turning 22. He's only played 39 games. So that's where I'm not going to give up on a guy who's played 39 games in the NHL. But I feel like this upcoming season is going to be a huge season for him to prove that, yes, I can be an NHL defenseman, and not only be an NHL defenseman, like do what you draft me to do, and that's provide offense. And then if you just get just enough defensively from him, I think he'll be okay. So, I think going into this year, we Merkley needs, if he plays, we'll say he plays 70 games, I don't know if maybe he starts in the Barracuda and he kind of lights things up there, or, he gets scratched here and there just because of a young player thing. But if he scores, if he's played 70 games, I think he really needs to be looking at like, that 25, 30 point mark. Maybe he's got like 5 goals, 25 assists, to really kind of try to prove himself and, starting to hit that like 17, 18 minute time on ice for him. So yeah, Ryan Merkley, big season for him going into this year. So let me know what you think. If you think Ryan Merkley, if being too hard on him, if not being hard enough on Ryan Merkley, if you're done with Ryan Merkley, let me know. I want to thank you guys for coming back. I know, last week was a little tough with Kyle leaving, and I do want to thank you guys for sticking around. And, as we wade into the unknown with a solo host on Locked On Sharks. So I've got a bunch of episodes already planned out for this week, including tomorrow, where we are going to be looking at something that I wrote that's going to be coming out. So going to be kind of looking at where teams are at in their life cycles and how that affects their decisions. So I'm going to take a bigger, broader approach to things. So you can check us out, of course, I guess check me out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Putting up all of our work there as well, all at Locked On Sharks. You can email the show at lockedonsharks@gmail.com. Of course, you can watch me on YouTube as I'm trying to get to 1,000. The goal is to try to get to 1,000 subscribers before the draft. So if you guys haven't done so, make sure you guys subscribe. Please do that. It really helps me out as I try to kind of take the show into the next step. So you can listen wherever you get podcasts: Apple, Odyssey, Spotify. If you haven't, especially if you're on Apple, make sure you guys leave a nice 5-star review. Again, it helps the old algorithm. That way other people can find the show as well. So take 2 seconds, leave those 5 stars. Again, really appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter at myfryhole. And again, thank you guys for making us your first listen of the day. Now go check out the Locked On NHL show so you can get updated on all that's going on in the playoffs, and especially as we're starting to wind down to the Final Four here. So and like I said, I'll be back tomorrow where we're going to take a nice kind of a step out, big picture approach to team building and where teams are at. And I'll catch you guys later. Bye, friends.